as the Lord said in Ether, if you come unto me, I will show you your weakness. And I feel that. I feel that's more strongly than ever.
I stay.
I stay.
I stay.
I stay.
I stay.
I stay.
I'm staying here.
To whom else shall we go?
The Why I Stay podcast, where we find joy in staying in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I'm your host, Lynzi Clyde, and I want to ask you, why do you stay? What does living with integrity mean? What is required of us to continue on the covenant path? Is it just a check the box list type of thing? Or are we rooting down into this gospel and what it actually can provide? I love this episode today with Matthew Saylors. He really brings it all home in his last question that he answers. And it just sparked something within me. Before we go into the episode itself, I'd love to just invite you to share this episode with a friend who is making covenants. Do you have a friend who's leaving on a mission and is being ordained to the Melchizedek priesthood, or going through the temple for the first time, or maybe even a convert like Matthew and being baptized? Share this episode with somebody who it would mean the most to. Thank you so much. The way that this podcast grows is through your shares and your proclaiming the podcast for me. Thank you so much for all you're doing and being here every week. All right, guys, no more rambling. Matthew Saylors. Hello and welcome back to the Why I Stay podcast. Talk about why we choose to stay and explore the experiences of just our everyday members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I'm so glad you're here. And whether you are a lifetime member or a convert, a recent convert, or someone who's even just looking for a shred of hope about maybe coming back to the Church of Jesus Christ, welcome. I hope that you hear something that you need to hear today. And with us, we've got our special guest, as always, Matthew Saylors. Matthew, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Lynzi. Glad to be here.
We're glad to have you. Listeners, if you're new, welcome. This is how it's going to go down. We got rapid fire questions for Matthew, 3 exploratory questions to probe into his life experience in the gospel. And then the final question everybody gets: why do you stay in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? So Matthew, are you ready for the rapid fires?
I sure hope so.
Nobody knows until we actually get started. So here we go. Matthew, how old are you?
I am 29 and about, less than 1 month away from my 30th birthday.
Woohoo, the big 3-0.
Yes.
Do you have any nicknames?
My father likes to call me Tadpole. That's from my infancy, but yeah.
That's pretty sweet.
Or Warren, it's my middle name. So, but that's when it's serious. You're Warren.
And so it's not a nickname; it's more of a name. There's no nick about it.
Nope.
Why do we call it nicknames anyway? I don't know. I have to look that up. What state do you live in?
I reside in Texas, and that is my home state.
Okay. What is your favorite food?
Hard question, but I would say if I go to Mexican restaurants, which is fairly often, I always try the quesadilla first, because I do like quesadillas a lot, and that's kind of my benchmark to feel how good that restaurant is.
Yeah, okay. And so are you putting anything in the quesadilla, or is it just straight up cheese quesadilla?
So, whatever meats they have available, that's important. But that actually tells me the authenticity of the restaurant, because the last one I went to was very authentic, and I was able to put in traditional lengua, which is actually tongue, the cow tongue. Yeah, that's a traditional Mexican thing. So,
wow, yeah. We'll have to get your top ranked Mexican food lists for Texas, and we can put them in the show notes. How about that?
Sounds good.
What is your current hobby?
I love playing the guitar. I sing a little bit. I have music written that I will publish probably in the future at some point. But as a new dad, roughly, it's kind of hard. But yes, I do love music.
As he says, as he massages his eyeballs from fatigue. Yeah. What is your most favorite calling you have ever held?
Missionary. Yeah, I've loved different things about different callings, but just being a missionary is amazing.
What is a controversial opinion that you hold? Like everybody loves Crocs, but you hate them.
October's for Halloween, November's for Thanksgiving, and December's for Christmas.
There
And
you go.
I like to keep it that way.
I literally yelled in Costco when in the end of July, we're in our
Yep.
shorts and our flip-flops, and there is like a big werewolf statue that they've put up for Halloween. And
Hmm.
I was like, can we just like get through summer yet? Like school has not even started and you're putting a werewolf in a werewolf named Ben in Costco.
Yes.
Like I'm not okay with this. So you could be controversial, especially in the Christmas zone. I know people
Mm.
feel strongly about that, but I'm
Yeah.
with you. I'm with you. What is your biggest dream?
Mm. I certainly want to have a home kind of in a semi-rural or rural area, preferably something we've built ourselves,
Hmm.
or at least planned ourselves, and a place where my kids can grow up close to society and interacting with society, but a little bit like I grew up. I was raised on a ranch, and I just love the peacefulness of that lifestyle, so different from
Hmm.
the hectic nature of a lot of today's life. So I want them to get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, that's lovely. What is something about you that is the same now as it was when you were in high school?
I'm probably, well, I know that I'm a little on the introverted side, and I know that I'm a little bit on the serious side. A lot of people have told me that. Um, so that seems to be a very consistent part of my personality. Trying to get better.
What do you mean better? We need introverts. What are we talking about? We can't all be crazy extroverts. What would the world be like? There'd be no ranches, Kay. We need
Exactly.
you. Yeah, we need you. Awesome. Bonus question. You've got your biggest dream. You've built your home on a piece of property,
Hmm.
away from it all, but close enough to interact. And you get to name it. You get to give the ranch, your new home, a name. What is it?
Wow. Sailor's Cove. We'll go with that
Ooh,
for right now.
pull in some nautical themes and like what is it called? Bouncing off your last name. Perfect.
Yes.
Very clever. I love it. All right, Matthew, thank you so much for indulging us in those rapid fires. Let's get into your exploratory questions now. And the
Sure.
first one that we have for you today is we want to know what is a basic gospel principle you have gained a testimony of recently?
That would be integrity.
Hmm.
And the reason I would say integrity. So this was added whenever Preach My Gospel was updated. I think last year.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
attributes of Christ are in chapter 6, and I used the old Preach My Gospel on my mission, but the new one has added the attribute of integrity. And there was a general conference talk about that as well. I think 2 conferences ago. So I think what's really impacted me is the fact that a lot of what we do in the gospel, sometimes we get impatient and we look for quick fixes and instant gratification, and that is not how most of the things that really matter in our lives are going to work.
Mm.
There's in psychology and in other fields, there's a law of accelerating returns where you have this learning curve that starts out really slow, and then slowly it picks up, and then it starts exponentially compounding on itself. And that can go in both directions. You can have that happen negatively. For
Mm.
example, addictions, they're putting you on a high and you're loving it. And then almost imperceptibly, you have to start chasing it more and more and more. And it just gets worse and worse and worse over time and less rewarding. Whereas if you're learning like maybe an instrument, it's the other way around. It's
Yes.
hard for a long time. And then slowly you start to make progress. And then all of a sudden something clicks and you take off, right? And that's really how the gospel works in my experience. And so when I say integrity, it's important to me because when I've tried just living the doctrine of Christ or applying a perspective that comes from the plan of salvation in my day to day life, in real moments of stress, in real times of hardship, it's hard for me to see results. But over the long haul, I can absolutely tell that I am no longer doing things that I used to do that I regret.
Mm.
And I'm doing more of the things that make me feel like I'm making progress, if that makes sense.
Definitely. And I think we have to mindfully recognize this and practice this and also see this pattern in other things. I love that you brought in the idea of practicing a musical instrument, because I think we can all agree that that's something that is so worthwhile and so difficult for anybody who ever started and stopped,
Yeah.
like yours truly here. 2 months of piano lessons when I was 14, and I was like, I'm out of here, I'm not playing
Mhm.
like chopsticks anymore.
Yeah.
But looking back, man, I wish I had just had the discipline to just continue on, right? And it's almost always that way, that we don't feel like the deep regret until it's much farther away, much harder
Mhm.
to start again. And the
Yeah.
beautiful thing about the gospel of Jesus Christ is that we can. You're
Yeah.
never too old to start learning how to play a guitar, right?
That's right.
And Jesus Christ can help us with anything that we're trying to change. But I think that's a good indicator of like something worth pursuing. We need to look
Mhm.
at where do the highs come in? Is it in the end or is it at the beginning? And yeah, we like to have a little bit of teasers to help us along our way.
Yeah.
We pray and our teddy bear is found. I think the
Mhm.
Lord understands we need to learn that way. But the true living of it, the increase of power and spiritual direction, I find has been exactly the same. Is the more I double down and I wait patiently and find other areas of my life to change myself in, I become more like Jesus Christ, and I see him and I feel him more in my life. I love it.
Absolutely.
Let's bring you to the next question. Matthew, what is an experience that has increased your maturity or courage in living the gospel? And actually, hold on a second, because guys, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see me, but like I started this podcast episode with my headphones all tangled up, and I know it's just going to bother me for the rest of the time. I'll ask you the question again. What is an experience that increased your maturity or courage in living the gospel?
So one of my, I don't like to say favorite because I don't want to play favorites when it comes to the Lord's servants, but there's of the apostles who resonate with me the way they
Sure.
teach and
Yeah,
instruct.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Elder Bednar would probably be up there in number one or two.
Hmm.
Elder Bednar has taught a principle basing off what Joseph Smith taught, that faith is a principle of action and power. And Elder Bednar points out the sequence in that. The action comes first and then the power. We typically want it the other way around, where we
Yep.
get power so we can act because we're
Right.
afraid or we're unpracticed or whatever, but it's actually the other way around. So with me, when it comes to like being a missionary, my favorite calling, I came at that with great passion and I took it very seriously, but I was also coming at it as an introvert, as someone who just does not naturally want to be in front of a lot of strangers talking all the time. Just talking all day long totally drains me. So there were some real challenges there in my missionary experience, and then coming back home and now having to basically learn how to be a missionary all over again.
Hmm.
And so both on my mission and since then, what I learned was that if I keep acting in faith, I will learn how to access God's power. Sometimes I wish it were the other way around, that I could just magically get an indwelling of grace in an instant, but grace comes line upon line, right? Just like Revelation. So the experiences I've had with trying to be a missionary in different parts of the world, I think has taught me a lesson that I want to keep for the rest of my life, and that I can apply to pretty much everything. Anything that's hard, anytime that I see weaknesses in my personality or my work, or my efforts to live the gospel, to be a good husband and father, whatever it may be, I know that I need a lot of work, but that doesn't have to be discouraging, because as soon as I start acting in faith on something, I know that the Lord will start blessing me, and I'll see it over time.
I was listening to another podcast. I think it was like LDS Creators podcast, and she had an author on there, and he said, if you give a little bit of your time to whatever thing you're trying to achieve every day, The Lord, hardly ever makes something out of nothing with us.
Mhm.
It's what do we have? Loaves and fishes wise. He could feed the multitudes and overflow it if you would just give him 2 fish and a couple loaves of bread, right? That small, and I think this goes really well with your first answer about integrity. Just
Yeah,
having the grit and the ability to uphold your end of the promise, or at least the willingness to try and
right.
have faith, that step by step, little by little, which, yes, Elder Bednar is such a masterful teacher of those principles. And it's something that we need, and it's something we shouldn't take for granted. It really can change our lives. And are there any other like specific examples in your life where you've seen yourself become more than you could have been on your own?
Yeah, I can tell you where I'm in the middle of it right now.
Yes, I
Um,
love the in the middle stories. Yes, let's hear it.
so I've been involved in some capacity with the addiction recovery program in the church for probably about 10 years now. And that's been a wonderful journey. A lot of healing, a lot of self discovery, good, bad,
Mm.
and all in between. Since my wife and I have moved here to Lubbock, where she's working full time and I'm taking care of our baby full time, I've had a lot of time to reflect. Even though I don't get to study and a lot of other things have changed in my life since we had a baby, I get a lot of time to just think. And I see more clearly my child has brought out the better parts of me in high resolution and the not so great parts of me in high resolution.
Yeah, magnifying glass. Yeah.
Yes. And man, that's a revelatory experience. And I'm grateful that the promise is true that, as the Lord said in Ether, if you come unto me, I will show you your weakness. And I feel that. I feel that's more strongly than ever. So one of the great blessings has been, as I have continued practicing the program and the steps and everything, part of that is a rigorous self-examination, and you explore the things that trigger you, not just in terms of an addiction, but like trigger you, the lesser good parts of you, right?
Yeah.
And I see why I do that, where that comes from, and that allows me the chance to just work on that. And I'm hopeful and I'm happy because I can see over the last year how I don't get angry as quickly as I used to. I don't get frustrated when my baby's crying and I don't understand why, or whatever. And that doesn't mean it's stopped completely. It means that I'm being able to see the progress. So that's an ongoing construction site in my soul right now, but
I love that.
I'm grateful for it.
What a good what a good analogy. And you know, it can be painful when the Lord, when the Father shows us our weaknesses, but when you were saying that, I thought to myself, well, why would he invite us to show us our weaknesses? What's the purpose, right? It's not just to sit there and be like, you need to work on this, like look how bad you are. He
Yeah,
doesn't do that. It's so that we can change and improve and have a better quality of life. He does it because he loves us. And so leaning in to these circumstances, whether it's having a baby or a major life change or dealing with grief or death and or even addiction, it's an everything in mortality can be used as a magnifying glass to show us pieces of ourselves, more resilience and integrity than we thought was there, and also the other parts of ourselves that need to start to undergo that construction process, that restoration process, bringing us back to our pure state that we, innocent, but with more maturity and knowledge that we
yeah.
had from before. Yeah.
And the spirit. This is another one of Elder Bednar's teachings. The
Yeah.
spirit will tell you how you're doing.
Hmm.
And in those times of self-examination, you need the spirit because you can easily get down on yourself,
Yeah. All
or
the time.
you can easily become self-deceptive. So both of those extremes, the spirit helps you ride right in between them.
Yeah. Balance it out. And I think that's another good indicator of, is what I'm thinking about myself true?
Yeah.
How badly do we feel about ourselves, or how proudly do we feel about ourselves? And if we are honest with ourselves, that's humility, and that's when the Spirit can come in and tell us where we actually
Yes.
are at, and confirm that we're still loved right
Right.
exactly where we are.
Always.
Always.
Yes.
Beautiful. All right, so your third exploratory question is, when have you had to go on faith because a prompting didn't make sense? What did you learn?
This was my favorite question, because all these questions are about growth, but this one is really special to me. I was married in October of 2021, so coming up on 3 years now. And up to that point, super brief context, I'm a convert to the church as an adult, baptized when I was 21 in 2015. And so when I got married, I felt like I could check off all of the boxes for the covenant path, all
Yes.
the ordinances, with the exception of being sealed to my parents, which it's still up in the air, but we'll see. But everything that I had under my control at that point to do, I had tried to do, and the Lord had blessed me and guided me. And so here I was, and happy with my wife. And I kind of felt like, okay, well, now my job is to not apostatize for the next, 8 decades or however long I live.
Right. Yeah.
And President Nelson had just given a talk, that October conference, 2021, I believe, the temple and your spiritual foundation. And if it's okay, I want to read like a really
Yeah.
small quote from his
Of
talk
course.
here.
Please do. Please do.
He said, the Lord wants you to have spiritual insights and awakenings you've never had before. To each of you who has made temple covenants, I plead with you to seek prayerfully and consistently to understand temple ordinances and covenants. Spiritual doors will open. You will learn how to part the veil between heaven and earth, how to ask for God's angels to attend you, and how better to receive direction from heaven. Your diligent efforts to do so will reinforce and strengthen your spiritual foundation. Close quote there. So I kind of looked at that and I was like, I don't think I really know how to do any of that. If I do, I don't recognize it. So that got me thinking for a little bit. And then when I started, my wife and I do like planning kind of for each year. We set some goals, and we do that right about December of each year for the following year. And I very distinctly got the impression, you need to go over all the covenants you've made, and you need to understand them better, and you need to improve at keeping them. And I turned to the Book of Mormon as kind of the catalyst for helping me understand what do I need to change and how. And so throughout 2022, that was my project. That was my construction site. Now that's still kind of ongoing to some extent, but I had experiences that year that were profound, spiritual experiences. We went to visited my old mission country. I felt prompted that we needed to make that kind of almost like a humanitarian aid trip, as well as a vacation and just meeting our old friends. There was a lot of guidance there. There were miracles involved in even getting there. It was amazing. And there were various spiritual experiences that occurred in conjunction with that and following that, some of which are the kind that I would put in a journal and probably not ever talk about. And it was so profound. That year was so transformative for me that I would often just reflect later, towards the end of 2022, thinking, why would the Lord bless me so abundantly? Like I just feel like it was such an outpouring and so many amazing things that we both saw, my wife and I. And ultimately I thought, well, the Lord's just a gracious God, and he loves me and he wants to bless me. And he sent the prophet to send that message to me. And he blessed me when I obeyed it. And I think all that's true. But there was also a period in January 2023 when After a temple session, my wife and I got a text message saying we were in Rexburg at the time, and our young married student ward, stake presidency, wanted to meet with us. Long story short, I had opportunities that year to serve in various capacities in our stake, and there were a lot of people that needed help with their testimonies, people that need to be strengthened. I personally faced more opposition. I was exposed to more criticism of the church than I ever had been before in my life. And that's saying something, because when I joined the church, I was previously Baptist and I was swimming in anti-church material. So this was a new level. And there was all these, these opportunities to serve and these oppositions that were coming. I realized the Lord had prepared me for that, not just so that I could stay strong, but so that I could help others. And so, yeah, that goes into my testimony of why President Nelson's a prophet.
Yeah.
And it also goes in my testimony that, I'm a nobody. I mean, we're all somebody to God, but in the church, I'm just a regular member, just like you. And if we regular members can get these outpourings of spiritual blessings, guidance, miracles, whatever it is we need, even if we don't understand why we're being guided in that way in that moment, I mean, anybody can.
Yeah.
And isn't that amazing? Isn't it so cool that we can get not necessarily the same type of experiences, but the same type of testimony and the same spiritual power that anyone in the scriptures has. It's available to us. And the temple is at the heart of that process.
What an incredible testimony and story. And I feel my own life echoing yours as well. I've seen times of, kind of like prosperity and ease almost, and more of like a rest period where I'm being made ready, followed by intensity, where there's a lot thrown at me and I have a lot to carry and I'm growing in new, expansive ways that aren't always painless,
Right.
And just listening to you read President Nelson's quote gave me new perspective. Sometimes I just need to hear it in a new voice. Almost like you reading it to me was different from me hearing him read it, if that makes sense. And it just came to me so powerfully now. And I know he's a prophet and I know those words were inspired. And maybe it's just that now I needed to hear that because there's something for me to learn. And President Nelson, I keep referring over here to my phone, but every time he gets up in conference now, he talks about the blessings of the temple. He talks about the dedication prayers that those blessings are for everyone throughout the whole church now. Like it's not just for them then. And what you just mentioned, and then this past just a weekend ago, at the time of this recording, was October 2024 conference. And again, he says the temple, there's more blessings. We can find Jesus Christ in the temple. He will manifest himself to us. And he promises, like, I want you to go and figure out what that means. And it's kind of just like, ooh, like I'm so excited about that. And I love your testimony of this way that he prepares you, and he showed you the way. He showed you that the prophet of God, listening to him could change your life and give you that strength that you needed. It's just beautiful. It's so amazing. I just get so jazzed about it. It's awesome.
What a time to be alive.
What a time to be alive. It's so true. It's so true. We have so much weight and darkness around us, and yet, he can make our burdens light. If we let him, and if we seek to find him.
Briefly,
yes,
I just say, in conjunction with the experience I just related, the covenant path, I viewed it as a checklist in the beginning, to some degree. And what I've learned is that, yes, we should be looking forward to the next ordinance. And for those of us who have all the ordinances, from baptism to sealing to parents, it's easy to see that as saying, okay, I'm done. But it's not just another ordinance you're looking forward to. You're also looking forward to the sanctification that comes from keeping the covenants associated with those ordinances and the spiritual blessings that are tied with that sanctification. I think if we look at it that way, we're going to get rid of the checklist mentality, and we're going to start seeing that we're always on a journey and we're never done. as Joseph Smith said, it'll be a long time after the veil before we learn everything. So that makes life a little bit more exciting to me.
We've got a lot more to do. We've got
Yeah.
8 decades or however many more decades, and maybe even 8 minutes more.
Yeah.
And we just need to try our best and recognize we're going to have hard days. And the Lord knows every hard day we're ever going to have because he has already felt it.
Yes.
And we can rely on that and follow him with dogged perseverance and integrity and grit, and find the blessings that come from covenant keeping along the way.
Yes.
All right, Matthew, here we go. Are you ready for the final question?
Yes, ma'am.
Matthew, why do you stay in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints?
I joined the church and I continue to stay in the church because this church is the place where God is fulfilling his promises to me. In 2009, when I did not want to live anymore, I was in the middle of a very serious depression. The Lord promised me, as I was reading a verse in the Bible, that I would find a morning of light and truth if I chose to live. And I found that when he, through his Spirit, told me I needed to investigate this church. The promise was fulfilled. But I stay because there is further light and truth. I'm never done. There's always more to learn. And there's always work to be done. And this is the church where all of God's promises are being fulfilled to me, and where he's training me to help others receive those same blessings in their lives. And I wouldn't expect, or I wouldn't hope for anything more than the privilege of belonging to him and to the church where he's giving me these blessings.
Incredible. Matthew, thank you so much for your time, for your testimony, and for all the good that you're doing in this world. We are so grateful for you and your light. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lynzi.
What do you want to understand more about the gospel of Jesus Christ after hearing this episode? I want to go and look into my covenants and dissect them. And we kind of talked about this in Rebecca Devonis's episode a few weeks back, where she talks about just how she went like whole hog deep dive into covenants. What do they mean? What are we actually promising to do, and how can we better keep them? If we focus on these things and not just kind of go by, we will feel that anchoring peace in our Savior Jesus Christ that comes through this priesthood power that we have access to because of our covenants with God. It's so important in this day and age. We're just getting closer to the second coming. That's just all there is to it. And yeah, we always have been. But the closer we are, the more strength we need to have, right? We need to be able to have peace in hard times. Though winds and waves surround us, what can we do? We can anchor ourselves in our covenants with God through Jesus Christ. It's an incredible gift. We can't let it go. Don't let it go. We're grateful that we're all here together staying. Thank you guys so much for your shares, for your listens, for your own heart outreaches as you listen and you connect with us. We feel it. Like we can feel this body of saints. We're coming together in miraculous and amazing ways. So thank you for being here. We'll see you next week. And again, thank you for staying with us.
The Why I Stay podcast is a faith-based podcast exploring the lives and experiences of members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This podcast is not produced or endorsed by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but we do love that church. All rights reserved. And a great big shout out to Fast Sounds from Pixabay for the amazing and jammin' intro-outro music. Thanks, guys.